Hello crafty friends, this is Jen from Katahdin Crafts, and I am back up on the Hedgehog Hollow blog today with a fun little shaker card from the September subscription box. I hope that everybody was lucky enough to get one of these when they're still out. They've been a lot of fun to work with this month. As you can see, the theme has been the Day of the Dead. This was the rose stencil that came with the box. And then this is the bride and groom that I used along with the flower that also looks like a rose from the Dia de los Muertos set. And forgive my Spanish and lack of the knowledge of it. And that was Whimsy Stance Build a Graveyard. And I used a few items from that set. And also I used the Cat Scrappiness, the largest die from her Slimline die. Let me see. That is called actually Tri-Frame Slimline Dies. And now I'm cutting out a bunch of images, still not sure what I was going to use at this point, but I really don't end up using very many of them. And then I'm trying something different. This shaker card, I decided to not use foam tape. I got a tip from my friend Carrie Rhodes from one of her recent shaker card videos, and I decided to try it. So what she did was just cut out a lot of die cuts. I cut out 6, I believe, of the tri-frame slimline. And then I just stacked them on top of each other. And this avoided me having to fight with the foam tape when I went to put my slimline or my shaker elements in. And so it was an interesting, just a different take on a shaker card. And it really wasn't that much harder to do. So I just stacked those up and I cut my acetate a little bit smaller than my die cut size. And as you can see, these frame dies from Cat Scrappiness works perfect for a shaker card. It's just an automatic frame. I love it. For this card, I used one of my favorite color schemes, which is black and white with a shock of color, and this time it is red. And probably red with the black and white really is my all-time favorite. And the details on these stamps are so fine that I found that I definitely couldn't do much of a blend. So I did a lot of simple coloring, which is okay. I like the way the results. But on the hat, I was able, there's a little bit more real estate there, so I was able to do a little bit more of a blend. So I did use my N grays, my N3, 5, and 7, and I blended that out. I just kept on working until I liked the dimension that I got. And now I'm just doing the suit, and I picked the grays again for around his skin coloring. I didn't want just plain white on their skin or bones. I guess they don't have skin when they're skeletons on their bones. I wanted a little bit of shading or a little bit of color of some sort, so I didn't want them just stark white because I am leaving their faces that way. So I did a little bit, I guess, of shadowing on their chins and their neckline. And then my red, I used primarily R27 through most of my red coloring. There's a few that I was able to try to do a little bit of shading and blending, and I pulled out R24 for that and R29 on this as well. So right now for the rose, of course, it's a little bit bigger. So I went ahead and put down just a layer of R24. And then I went back in and did some cast shadowing with R27 and R29. And then I just went right back over everything and blended it out and smoothed it with R24 again. You can see, and I do another one of those off camera. So I used 2. And as you can see, I just was working on all the details. And now I use my scan and cut out all the images. At this point, I still wasn't sure how my scene was going to unfold. I didn't think that I was going to need the other skeleton in his guitar, but I wasn't quite sure. So I cut him out just in case I decided to use him. But now I'm going to do the bride in the same exact color scheme as the groom. My R27 and R24 to do those flowers because they're a little bit bigger. But then when you get onto the details, I liked actually using that type of marker rather than the sketch for those little details. And, I adjusted my lighting and really got in there just so I could see it. They're very, very fine details. And I'm sure not everything's perfect, but I'm okay with that because I'm not perfect. Not by even little. Not even a little. All right, so now I'm just doing that around the edges of the eyes with a little bit of red. And I did use different grays for their bones versus their clothing. I pulled out some cool grays for their clothing and used the neutral for their bones, just to change it up a little bit. A little bit of contrast, or a little bit, just a little different. And I tried to use, actually, I experimented a little bit at first, a little R20, or sorry, RO2 for the tongue, just for a little bit different red. And I experimented a little bit with my gel pen. I wanted a little bit of black and shininess on some of those markings on the face, but it was just such fine detail, and my gel pen was not detailed enough. So I wasn't able to do that. So I went back to the drawing board and just used my Copics, which I'm still very happy. And if I wanted that shine, I guess I could have probably used like a glaze maybe and did the whole, like the whole entire image. And that could have been pretty too. And yeah, now I kind of just thought of that. That would have been a different little effect. Now I debated on how to handle the hair. I thought about just doing gray hair, but everything was so gray. Everything was just really gray in this, gray or white. So I decided to go ahead and put a little bit of the blonde. So that's what I did for both of them, because I really did want them to match. So I went with the blonde. And I just, very simple, well, R31 and, oh sorry, E31. I went with the E's with this. And there I go. I'm just had to go back to his little suit and finish that little area up. And I just fixed up a couple of the red spots. So now I didn't want these to be completely white either, so I just pulled out that C0 for that. And now I'm just starting to decide exactly how I want my scene to play out. And I liked the way that looked. Very simple, but I knew that the shaker was going to be, all the elements were going to be in the back. Oh, and then I pulled out Honeybee's Treat Shop add-on, and I just wanted them for the little banner, which I thought was going to add to it really nicely. So I just stamped out 4 of those, and then I just colored them again with that R27. And I used Copic friendly ink with that, the Lawn Fawn ink, and then just did some simple coloring. It's just, they're so small and detailed that there's no way of getting much of a blend there. And I used the Honeybee die cuts that go with this set to cut them all out. So I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to work on my background panel next, which is 8 3/4 by 3 3/4. And I'm going to pull out the rose stencil for this and use a little bit of the pixie spray on the back, and that just makes it sticky. So you spray that and then you let it sit for about a minute, and then it becomes super tacky, but yet not tacky enough that it tears your paper, which is really nice. So I find it very useful in my craft room, and I use it almost every time that I use a stencil. And now I'm going to use Oxide ink in Hickory Smoke, just to keep with that whole black, white, grayish kind of tones. And I'm just going to ink that up. First, I touched my glass mat, so it's not such, I didn't get such harsh lines. So it's just a little bit softer of a blend. And just keep working that on there. I wanted it to be a little bit darker in some areas and then lighter in others, just to give it a little bit of shading. Well, very simple, easy use of, the stencil. The stencil is very easy to use. And as you can see, the pixie spray really does its job and holds it right in place. So let's see, I wasn't even inking up at the end. I was just using from the little ink splotch that I left on the mat and just picking up the ink from there, because I really didn't want it very dark. Just a little bit of a subtle hint in the back. We're going to have so many elements going on in the front, and with all those shaker elements, that I just wanted a little bit of something in the back. And now I wanted to, at first I thought about going ahead and just recutting the graveyard dies in black cardstock, but why not just grab out my Copic markers? So I went ahead and used my N5 and my N7 and just colored in those, and so they match perfectly the whole scheme. And if you just use the side of your marker and work in the ink to the fibers, just put a couple different layers down, it really doesn't leave any sort of line. It all just blends really well. So that's a pretty simple way of getting any color that you want with your Copic markers. You don't always have to use a colored cardstock. And so, yeah, I do this quite often in my work. So just putting that N7. And then, like I said, once it dries, it's all nice and even. And this is just another way of saving some time too from looking for that perfect cardstock. You know, if it wasn't black that I was looking for and I wanted that red and having to match that up. Anyway, the Copic coloring works for solid things as well. Now it's time to assemble everything and start finalizing the card. And I'm going to use liquid glue for this because I like the wiggle room that liquid glue gives me. And also with that adhesive, or with the acetate, you can, if you did get a little bit onto the acetate, you have a few minutes that you can take it off, or a few seconds at least, that you can still remove it and not tear your project. I'm quite the messy gluer. Yeah, and my shaker cards always come with lots of love and some pet hair. And I was counting the grids and trying to get them kind of centered. And I end up probably pretty much just eyeing it anyway. But, yeah. Just adding the cross there. So, in the middle of this card, I don't think it's happened quite yet. In the middle of this card, my whole craft room was moved, actually. So I filmed some of it in the evening. And then the next day, we all decided, well, we've been in the process of moving around my teenagers' bedrooms and combine, because they've been sharing a room for, well, forever, pretty much. And one's 16 now and one's 14, and they need their space. The house needs them to have their space. So in the middle of this, everybody decided that it was time. It was a Sunday and it was time to start moving. So yeah. So I got half of the card done, and then my whole craft room was moved to my new bedroom slash craft room. I used to have a craft room slash homeschool room, and that was changed now to the 16-year-old's bedroom, and then my bedroom is the 14-year-old's bedroom, and then their shared bedroom is now my bedroom slash craft room and my husband's office as well. It is a bigger space, but it's pretty crowded in here. I will do probably a video at some point once I get a little organized. But so the second half of doing this card, I really basically didn't know where anything was. I was so confused. Yeah, everything was just kind of fast and furious. 5 people bringing everything up and down the stairs and then switching up all the rooms. Yeah, it was crazy times. Crazy times. But hey, we got it done, and now it's just all the little details. I have some deadlines this week that I have to get to and some fun card making. But once I get that done, and then it's just all of the little fine details of figuring out, yeah, where everything is. It was interesting even to get dressed today because my daughter emptied my closet for me. She was being so nice because she was pushing me out of my bedroom so she could have it. So yeah, crazy times, like I said, but hey, they're all very happy. So now, as you can see, I'm just placing all of these little pendants, flags onto the card. And when I was playing with this, I only actually had 3 on there, and then as I started putting the card together, I needed 4. So I had to be a little strategic in that middle. As you can see, I overglued onto the acetate, and then I needed to kind of cover up that boo-boo. So I'm like, what am I gonna do here? So I was playing right now to see which skeleton would be able to cover that. Plus I needed something to hide the banner, the way that the banners had the space. So I didn't like the way the larger skeleton worked. I tried it on the outside, on the inside. I didn't like that. So I went ahead and put that into the corner where I had planned to place that. And now I'm going to use one of the smaller ones. So putting that right there, and that covers that. As you can see, it has hollow eyes, but what I've decided to do was cut out another skeleton and go ahead and use that R27 and just do the eyes, which are very, very tiny, but it all worked out in the end. And so I was able to fill in those spaces. And I knew that when I was putting that on there, that would be my simple fix, that I would be able to put the spaces, the negative space back in. And now this is just me. I wanted to show you how you can really, if you go easy and don't push too hard, that you can take the liquid glue right off. It kind of just balled up as I worked it with the tweezers. And then I used the tweezers and just picked it right off. So that was an easy cleanup, and see, just like new. I'm going to add the other skeleton to the corner. And I'm using art glitter glue for this project. I think I use mono glue for the larger pieces when I'm putting the panels on, but the art glitter glue has that nice fine precision tip, and that's I love it. And then you have that little pin that you can put in to the tip, and so it helps with relieving clogging, which is always an issue with liquid glue, of course. I mean, it's not completely perfect. You have to sometimes work the pin in and out, but overall it works really well. So now I'm using a used dryer sheet and trying to attempt to not have as much static and to get some of the cat hair out of there. Now is the fun part. Now I'm going to start adding some of those shaker elements. And these are just some red seed beads that I've had in my stash for literally years. So I'm just adding some of those. And I checked I looked to make sure that my channel that I made, the depth was enough to cover those, and it was. And then I had some little fun hearts in the perfect colors, red, black, and white, from Miss Ink Stamps. And then I also had some graphite pretty jewels from Pretty Pink Posh. So I added those into my shaker card. And what I decided to do is cut another piece of acetate just slightly smaller than the panel. Oh, actually, let me back up. Sorry. First, I decided to add some skeletons inside the shaker elements. So I only had 2 that I had cut out. So I went ahead and I cut out a bunch of others. And this also gave me some of those eyes that I could go back and color, so I could finish the skeleton on the front panel, on the front of the card, that needed that space filled in. So I just put a few skeletons, and now I cut a piece of acetate just slightly smaller than the card panel itself, and I added that right to the back. So now I actually have the shaker completely done in this manner. So now when I go to put it onto my back panel, I don't have to worry about everything falling out. I didn't have to worry about the foam tape being sealed on the edges perfectly. So nothing's escaping this, which is really super nice. So this is a fun way of doing it. It was my first time trying it like this, and I definitely liked it. So now I'm just adding a little glue and going to add that panel to my background panel. After adding all my little elements and fun stuff on there, I'm just adding a little weight to that to hold it down as I go ahead and fix up those eyes. Just pop those right in there. And I'm using a tool that sticks to the paper. Like, it's got a little sticky part and it's got a little end, but I just ordered one from the Hedgehog Hollow from Maker Forte. That is a pretty rainbow jewel pick. I can't wait to get that. It's really super pretty. And now I actually, for some reason, I had videoed this, I thought, but it wasn't there. So I'm going to just explain to you what I did. So they have, in this stamp set, they have a sentiment called Together Forever. And the sentiment is actually attached and up. The Together is on top, Forever is on the bottom. What I did is I cut it and separated it. You can do that with your stamps and not damage them and just make different configurations with them. And that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want them on top of each other, and I wanted to be able to cut them out with a banner die. So therefore I needed that little bit of extra space in between the words. So I went and just snipped them right in half and didn't damage it. And then I stamped on white cardstock Together, and then I stamped Forever, and I cut it out with my Honeybee Go-To banner die that I absolutely love. And I then used my R24 red Copic marker, and I colored those so they would match perfectly with the rest of the card. And I just played around a little bit with a tool to lift my bride and groom just slightly so I could slide those underneath. And there you go. I have Together Forever sentiment, but they're separated. Well, the sentiments are separated, but the bride and groom are together forever. All right. And so now, just to finish this off, I added a little heart embellishment from Miss Ink Stamps right in the front of the gravestone. And then just a couple of those Pretty Pink Posh rhinestones on the sides. just for little details. And I like the way that worked. And you see, if we go back to the skeleton, I do like the way that the red eyes looked. That tied it all in as well. Kind of creepy skeleton, but hey, I like it. And now looking at the card, I wonder if maybe I should have done that with the two that were in the corner. But, well, I didn't. But that could have been, you could do that. That would be probably another nice little detail. And for the card base, I cut a piece of black cardstock, 9 by 8, and then I scored it at the 4. And then I folded that in half. And that's going to leave just a slight little border along the card base, which I like. So it looks like it's triple matted now. Just pressing that down gently. And then I have some envelopes, some slimline envelopes from Simon Says Stamps that are pretty wide envelopes, and that's why I can do a 9x4 card, which I like that. I like having the extra space. So I just wanted you to see that you can actually slide this into an envelope. You can get the size because it is a little bit wider, I do believe, than most or some slimline cards, but I like to do mine this size, and then I have found an envelope that fits it. So there you go. We have a Together Forever shaker card. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I appreciate it. Please head on over to the Hedgehog Hollow blog for more design team inspiration with this subscription box. And it's almost October, so the new one and all the inspiration will be coming out very soon. Thank you very much. Visit me at katahdncrafts.com, on Instagram at katahdncrafts, and Facebook. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I'd appreciate you subscribing and ringing that bell so you get all the new videos that I put out for you. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye.